Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. Welcome on into the post-March COMEX delivery cycle Sunday open special. As you can see, I have an all-star panel lined up here to discuss everything going on in the silver market. And Dave Kranzler. Dave, I didn't even tell the joke before we started, so... Dave, do you want to tell the audience why you were often chuckling when we used to do these pre-recorded ones? Why you were chuckling when we would start?
Yeah, because you would either say something silly or make a joke.
Which was your favorite joke? The one about how Moses drinks his coffee?
I don't know that I heard that one.
He brews it. So anyway, fortunately, we have a fun show planned. In one corner over there is Dave Kranzler, not really Denver Dave Kranzler, because he's in Golden. But Dave, I appreciate you postponing dinner a little bit today to cover the open of the silver market. And perhaps in the next 8 minutes, you can give us your view of what you might expect. I'm kind of curious to see how it goes. So welcome on in, Dave. How are you today?
Okay. None the worse for wear.
Yeah, well, there we go. Way to...
How about you?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm excited you're here. And of course, my dear friend, Andy Schectman of Miles Franklin, who is one of the people that sells actual silver. So if you want... Oh, and Andy, I'm going to ask you my question that we ended our 13-hour silver romp the other night with. I'll make a note right now because I'm hoping one of you guys can explain to me what the spot price is. I guess after 12 years of studying silver, I'm confused about something. So hopefully you'll be able to help with that. But Andy, great to see you. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well, brother. Good to see you, and good to see you too, Dave.
Likewise, Andy.
Thank you.
So before we start, first of all, in case anybody didn't know, we started a YouTube silver call, and I don't know, I think it was around 1 o'clock Central Time on Friday. And we ended up going 13 hours, which was pretty awesome. I mean, in its own right, maybe it's a little bit overboard yet. We started bringing people on, and people kept having things to share and contribute. And one of my favorite parts of that was something I experienced during Silverfest, which I'm really quite proud of, where the times I saw that something can continue and people were enjoying it all day. And especially when I was able to take a step back and just create something that people could enjoy and had fun with. So we'll have a little announcement as I start taking a step to the background of certain things here. And, we will be having some opportunities with so many talented people like the amazing Patriots who started this GoFundMe fundraiser, which we will touch on also before, maybe after the open, but going to be opening things up where we'll have episodes of the show where I will not even be there on screen. I'll be behind the scenes, or I know everyone's been sending comments on Twitter saying, Chris, get some sleep. So I am going to start doing that. In fact, a little bit, our co-host for the day is going to come on and take over. And I mean, plus when you have Andy Schectman and Dave Kranzler and can hear them talk about the silver market, what else could somebody possibly need to hear me say about silver at this point? So with that said, we're at 4:57 Central, 5:57 Eastern. Quick thoughts, folks, before the silver market opens. Dave or Andy, why don't you go first? Because you've been manning the phones. You know what people have been doing over the weekend where you can buy or sell physical silver even when the COMEX price is whatever that COMEX spot price. We'll get to that. But what have you been seeing? And give Dave a minute so he can share if he has any expectations on the open.
Yeah, I mean, if demand was any indicative of price action, we'd see the price spike the minute that we'd see it gap up several dollars the minute it opens up. The demand hasn't let up, and I think people are not as not as concerned about the spot price or the premiums right now whatsoever. They're just more concerned about securing some stuff as it's been harder and harder and harder to get.
How would you compare this to what we've seen throughout the month of February? And again, for anyone who's watching for the first time, you've had Miles Franklin for about 30 years, and just as specific and detailed, just how would you rank what you saw over the last month? Was 2011, was there more volume, and whatever more volume was the difference in the way customers were reacting? Can you put that in context?
February was our biggest month in 31 years, period, by leaps and bounds. Last March was our previous biggest month in 31 years, and this exceeded it by quite a bit in a short month at that. So yeah, it's the demand isn't, if that's any inclination of what demand is, I don't know what else would be.
Sorry, Dave, you look a little flushed there upon hearing what Andy was just saying. And also we have two Daves. David Smith, welcome on in. David Smith of the Morgan Report. One of the people that, if I get my silver Make-A-Wish granted, would be one of my expert witnesses trying in a courtroom, trying to make sense of anything JP Morgan's research or Jeff Curry says. So David, welcome on in. Great to have you here, sir. How are you today?
Very good, Chris. It's good to be here, and it's good to hear Andy. And I'm in illustrious company already.
Good to see you, David.
It's been an interesting voyage here, and I'll tell you, I listened to what Jeff Curry said, and recently, and some of the other things. It really it's a head scratcher.
Yeah, well, we'll see if anyone can make sense of that today, especially as we're about to see the silver market open following options expiration, following COMEX delivery cycle, which there were deliveries, and you guys can share your thoughts on that. Not a massive amount. But with that said, Dave Kranzler, you looked a little flushed as you were hearing Andy Schectman comment on the order flow. So what do you think about that? And what are you expecting for the open?
Well, we're already open. I don't know. I don't sit on the watching gold and silver futures trade, every minute of the day. So, the price that we're seeing now could be completely different 5 minutes from now, especially given that this is just paper derivatives trading. It's not real gold and silver. The first thing I thought of when Andy said February was his largest month in the history of his company was that, what's even more remarkable about that is that February only has 28 days. Right. So, I think when I first saw this movement to try and squeeze the physical silver market from the retail side, because we've seen, half-assed efforts at that in the past. I wasn't sure how persistent buyers would be, but the persistence of the buying has lasted longer than I thought, and it sounds like it could go on a lot longer. I mean, you have that GoFundMe thing I guess that's to produce those silver squeeze signs or billboards or something. Someone should raise a GoFundMe account, maybe set up an LLC that everybody has an economic or legal equity interest in, and start standing for delivery for bars on the COMEX. Then I think you'd really see fireworks happen. But if the demand for physical silver from the retail side like this continues or even grows, I think it is possible we could see a short squeeze from the retail side. I mean, I'm not the first one to point this out recently, but it's not necessarily that there's a shortage of silver per se. There's a shortage of silver at this price level because there's a lot more demand than there is supply, and they're not letting the price regulate the supply and demand. So if you let the price, if the powers that be would let the price rise about $10, then we'd get a pretty good idea of what the elasticity or inelasticity is for the demand for silver, right? If I said that correctly from my economics 101 class, might have been this 200 level, but
Beautiful, Dave. It was
um,
beautiful.
I myself, I mean, I'd probably, maybe at $50 an ounce, I'd think about reselling some silver back through the dealer system. So it's really a matter of price.
Dave,
And they've sat on the price for so long that's why we have this problem. I do want to reiterate and emphasize, buying SLV is not going to squeeze the market, because if SLV effectively broke its chain to backing the shares with physical silver with the modifications that it made to the prospectus. I mean, it basically said outright, we're going to keep issuing shares, but we don't know that we'll be able to back them with silver. Not that they were necessarily fully backed with silver in the first place, but to me, I think there's a real problem brewing for the entities that are short via derivatives, gold and silver.
David Smith, well, obviously, people would want to consult their lawyers and legal financial advisors before acting on anything in this call, and certainly what Dave Kranzler just mentioned. Can you comment from your experience? You were trading, you talked the other day quite eloquently about trading futures back during the Hunt Brothers day. Is that, for any of the lawyers in the crowd, is that any thoughts on what Dave mentioned, the idea of creating an LLC so that there would be a vehicle that if people wanted to participate and take delivery on the COMEX, is that something that can be done?
I wouldn't think it would be that complex, but there's something that's a lot simpler, but I've thought about this, wondered about it for years, but the complete non-interest in silver producers themselves in holding a little back. Do you realize that if each of the silver companies held back 5% of what they produce in a month, and within 2 or 3 months, there would be something pretty significant going on, instead of touting, we have record production of silver at break even, and we've never.
I'm sorry, David. I spaced out. Could you repeat that again, please?
Okay. Are you able to hear me okay?
Oh, I could hear you fine. I just thought it was beautiful what you said, and I'd love to hear it again.
Well, what I've never understood, and that's actually getting to the boiling point now in my own feeling, is why the almost complete lack of interest on the part of silver producers to not hold back even a small amount of what they produce, just a few percent or 5% the most. And I understand that a lot of them have cash flow problems if they did, but not all of them. And not only that, but they could hold some back, and it wouldn't take much. And yet they go and they'll tout a news release and they'll say, we have produced record amount of silver, and they make 75 cents an ounce on it. And it's like, how much can we dig out and sell for break even? It doesn't make sense. But yet they seem to be oblivious, except for a few people like Brad over at Endeavor Silver, or Keith over at First Majestic, that hold back silver occasionally, and they make good money when they do. But imagine something where you build up a little bit of a silver chest, so to speak. It wouldn't take much.
That's a great idea, and I know GATA has complained about that with respect to gold producers for a long time, but that's a fantastic idea. I know First Majestic occasionally will hold back supply of silver. They'll keep some of what they produce on their balance sheet. And I was going through SSR Mining's financials last night, and it also looks like they stockpiled some silver as well. But you're right. I mean, a couple companies alone can't do it. If you had, and I wouldn't expect companies like Pan American Silver or Core Mining to do it. I mean, they're just run by the CEOs for the CEO's compensation. But if you had enough companies, Fortuna, they could probably be talked into doing it. I think that's a great idea. Maybe the group that's involved with you, Chris, including us, could lobby these. Just send the CEOs an email and say, hey, what are you doing here? Why don't you do this? Because at some point it's going to force the price of silver up a lot higher, and you'll make a lot more money off of what you hold back than you will off of what you produce and sell.
Well, Dave, my question, if I may, I think what you guys both said makes a lot of sense and is brilliant, but the only problem is like, where are we going to find someone who knows all these different silver companies, has been talking to them for a while? I mean, how can we find someone who actually knows these people?
Well,
Let me make
it doesn't take a complete listing. I mean, you could have a few that get started and the others would be by peer pressure, like, we're doing this and why aren't you? I mean, get 2 or 3 of them and they wouldn't even have to be large juniors, you know. In fact, it could be part of the value proposition. And I have to believe that if somebody in IR put out a little thing like, we are starting a silver vault, I think millennials would start buying the shares of that company because they're fulfilling a mandate which they have not addressed before. So it wouldn't be that difficult, and it would magnify what people are trying to do by buying an extra 20 ounces a month. You know.
Let me make one point. And while in a market that runs a deficit every year, 300,000+ last year, 250 the year before, every little bit would matter. But let's not forget that all of those dedicated silver mines only represent 30% of the silver that comes to market each year, because 70% is coming from byproduct mining of other metals. And these people aren't in the same, you know, they don't have the same incentive that perhaps a Keith Neumeyer would when they're mining tin or copper. So that's part of the issue. But yeah, I think no question about it. If the majors held back silver started, maybe they could at least incentivize all of the others to realize that this is the way to right the price. If there is no supply, all of a sudden things should change pretty quickly.
And you know, one way to look at this too, though, is that the majors, a lot of times silver for them is almost like base metal credits is to a primary silver producer. It's not a big deal for what they produce in more terms of copper and other products. So I would attack a small junior, or I'd go to 2 or 3 of those and say, look, let's get a little campaign going here. And it just wouldn't be that logistically difficult, I wouldn't think, to get the ball rolling. And at some point you would have critical mass amongst these people. And, like what Dr. Peter McGaw has said many times, he said, as you referred to, Andy, with about 30% of the silver being produced by primary silver producers, as opposed to 70% by base metal and majors. If you have a demand increase, a sharp one in silver, the little guys can't handle that. They can't ramp it up. And so by definition, they are on the margins, and that's where the price takes place, the change. It never starts in the center. So going to BHP and trying to convince them, or Glencore, they don't give a darn. But if you go to some smaller metals, 2 or 3 miners or 4, before long, you've got a mini cartel, so to speak.
That's where it would have to be in my book. It'd have to start there, and maybe with a guy like Keith who understands it and has done it before. Yeah, that to me is where the real change will come from.
Have a silver challenge where Keith says, I will hold back 5,000 ounces a month. And I know he's done a couple million before. It's not how much. It's a matter of start. I will hold back X amount of ounces, and I will match my holdback with whatever other junior does up to such and such a month. And before long, you'd have some new class 3 vaults getting set up to handle all this stuff.
We're on to something.
David, I think it's beautifully put. Although I may have been watching too many poker videos this weekend, so can you close your eyes and pretend not to hear what I'm going to say to Andy, who's a great poker player, and I'm going to ask for his advice on how to respond appropriately, if I may. Does it sound good?
Okay, sure.
Andy, now he just made a beautiful big bet, because I think he's got a full house, but I happen to have that beat. So should we just re-raise, call, or I'm thinking a check raise would be perfect here. What do you think?
Check raise, if you think you got the nuts, the check raise is always.
So I'm going to check. And David, if you want to play along, just in case you did hear me, you said 2 or 3 companies knew about that.
Yeah, I'm trying to start out small.
Just hypothetical spitballing. By the way, it is Sunday. We're just, everybody could crack open a beer. We're just having fun with friends. No legal financial advice, but I will still play a little online poker with my friends here today because that's the kind of thing I like doing. First of all, it's almost like the futures market is listening to the brilliance that these world experts are sharing in between my antics. Because fortunately, you mentioned Keith Newmeyer, so I mean, we don't have doesn't have to do anything. He's already done it, so we can write him down as one.
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Smith? Okay, so now we only need one or two more, right?
Okay.
No, I
first-
think you can probably get more than that. I mean,
Oh, easy, Mr. Kranzler. Andy, you're going to be the judge in this courtroom. Would you control your client? Dave,
Order
Dave
in the
Kranzler,
court.
we're going to have to hold you in contempt of the court here. You just you'll have your turn.
Bailiff,
So be
get
it.
him under control.
I'm going to log off and go get dinner soon, so you guys will have plenty of time to share your thoughts. But so David Smith, we have at least one so far, and you said 2 or 3 is all that is needed, right?
Well, I mean, we'll start small. I have others in mind, but I mean,
But to get the ball rolling, right?
right. And I'm not saying don't do anything till we get 20, but just a few. And then they, one or more of them could take the lead and offer a silver challenge.
Okay, I like it. Now, I'm not sure whether I hope some of these several silver companies that sponsor this show and bring you this every day. I don't know if they hope they should be watching or hope they shouldn't be watching now, but we'll try and have some fun here since it's a Sunday and silver's up. Because I had Jorge Ramiro Monroy from Reina Silver. Just a yes or no answer, please. All 3 of you. Are you familiar with Reina Silver as a silver company? Andy?
very familiar.
David?
Absolutely. I'm a shareholder.
As am I.
As am I.
I mentioned, because a lot of people asked the same exact question you did. And since I am fortunate to be the custodian of this platform is how I look at it. And I asked Jorge about it, a project that Dave Kranzler in a moment, perhaps you could tell us the exact clarification of the role of Peter McGaw, but some impressive people involved. And I get that question a lot. So I asked Jorge, and he actually pointed out a little interesting tidbit from Avino Silver and Gold Mines. And this was back in 2018, so years ago. Who knows how it's spread since then? Because they were pleased to announce that the concentrates prepayment agreement with Samsung. Now, I understand to Goldman, that's one of those small customers that don't impact the massive 25 billion ounce silver market. But looks like they made an agreement. So I would say if Jorge and I don't want to speak for him, but he pointed this out to me. So I would say, at least in terms of companies aware of it, that's 2. And now Avino has been acting on it, at least this link. And you guys know David Smith, how fortunate you're here because you're a mining stock expert along with your partner, David Morgan. And so Dave Kranzler, who writes about these stocks. So I'd say that's 3. And since my friend Andy did suggest going with the check raise, I will re-raise at least 1, 2, 3. I think Steve Cope of Silver Viper talked about it the other day. So I would say at least 3 more that I've directly talked to the guy running it that are at least aware of the exact idea that you've spoken of. And in case any executive from any other silver company has nothing better to do on a Sunday and they're watching this, it could be more than 6 so far. So the bet is to you, sir.
Yeah, and it's almost irrelevant how much you start out with.
Andy?
Yeah. He's backtracking. I think he's going to fold.
Well, he might re-raise me. He's a smart guy, so I don't know what he's going to be. I might be outclassed here. We'll find out.
Are you asking for a couple more names?
Oh, it is a re-raise. Yes, please tell us all the names
Out
you
of left
know
field.
of. Tell me the names of silver companies you know that you've already talked with this about or might be on board with it.
Well, I haven't talked to them about it, but I can give you names. But here's the thing. I love history. I've studied it all my life and everything. And I know how something can get started that's very tiny, mass movements often get started with 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 people, really. And I remember the tsunami, not the tsunami, the kamikaze wind that destroyed the Mongol fleet. And the Mongol fleet was encamped off the Hakata Bay, Japan, on their second go round at that. And one of the people on the deck of the ship said about this storm that eventually sank hundreds of ships and killed thousands of Mongols. He said, the storm started out in the sky the size of a man's fist. That's exactly what he said. And, we can start out the same way, the start of an acorn or of a man's fist. And it doesn't matter what size it is. All that matters is that stone starts rolling and gathers some more moss, gathers some more participation. And then you have from unexpected sources, you have perhaps Wall Street silver bets jumping on it and saying, hey, let's pressure some of these companies. And then somebody else comes out like the Elon Musk of silver and says, I'm in, and before long.
Someone like maybe Eric Sprott or someone like that.
Well, it might be, and so I just think, sometimes you start something without a clear path forward, but you have a clear idea of what you want to accomplish, and you have energy to get that started, and you start the momentum going, and then you go from there. But I just think it would be, and you could end up with something like the Silver Fund of the Americas or something like this, and then somebody decides to come up with a warehouse, a bonded warehouse where it's collected, and maybe you say we'll see what we have in a year. If we don't have 2 million ounces in a year, then we'll fold or whatever. I mean, there's all sorts of iterations you could come up with this thing.
David, I think that makes a lot of sense. And especially you mentioned having some energy and passion behind it. And with that said, Dave Kranzler, I'm going to turn it over to you as the real trading expert on our panel here. Do you think, what do you think is going to happen? We're at the 59,273 level of this fundraiser to get some new silver boards out there and advertise for the industry in a completely legal, honest, moral, and ethical fashion. I'm wondering, do you think there's resistance around the 60 level, or, I mean, it popped right through 50 once it got there. And I mean, you see it's growing even as the show is going on right now. So Dave Kranzler, what are the technicals showing us on this trend?
I don't know, man. It sounds to me like David is the trading expert. I didn't realize you were
your
trading
buddy that
silver
this
futures
question's a little
during
too hard. David Smith, can you fill in? Dave Kranzler is going to use his lifeline to call on your expertise here.
Well, he was trading silver futures when the Hunts were at it.
Lost it in the sun, Kranzler.
Well, I don't claim to be a trading expert, but I pay attention to it, and I wake up in the morning thinking about silver. But if you'd asked me this a couple of years ago, I would have said we're going to see some minor waves of selling pressure between, say, 35 and 45 or 50, and that will dampen things for a while, and it'll make it hard. The price will lap up against 45 or so. But the thing is, the way it dealt with going through from 1850 to 29, I'm not so sure about that anymore. I think it's possible that you could end up with once it gets above in the low 30s, it suddenly shoots up to 50 and goes to 55 and then retraces to 48 and then turns around. So I'm thinking that the amount of silver that might come out there might be a lot less than I would have thought a few years ago. So that's what makes me hesitant to say, oh, this is what will happen on the chart. And if people are smart, they're going to make sure that they're not left behind, because they really could be if they try to get too cute with resistance points on the chart, because sometimes Mr. Market doesn't understand what we do. And we need to understand what he does,
Well, David Smith, you answered my next question, which what can we expect in silver? Although actually I was asking, what are you expecting around the 60,000 level on this chart, which is in order to get more billboards out in the world, like the one you see showing up on my left here, hopefully. In fact, and all of our panelists can comment on this, because David Smith, before, I know it's a hard thing to analyze the technicals on, which is why we'll bring on the host for the rest of today's show, as I'm going to go get some dinner and let the experts discuss these and the other pressing matters in the silver market. But this was, what would you have thought a month ago, even if I had told you that in 2 days, some people that don't have to resort to the type of behavior that we see and document and send to the CFTC about certain banks, but in 2 days, they would kickstart a fundraiser just to get signs out there to share the message of silver in a completely legal and moral way, and that $59,000 would be raised. I think this is technically, we're past 48 hours, I believe. But David Smith, would you like to take that one first? And what do you expect around the 60,000 level? Is that going to be a resistance level? Just shoot straight up from there? What do you think?
I saw something a little while ago, and somebody here can correct me. I saw that SD Bullion had donated either $3,000 or $5,000.
That was $5,000 from SD
5,000.
Bullion.
Okay, so I don't think 60 necessarily is going to be the top. I think it might be. We could see tomorrow. We could see a breakaway gap to the upside.
What if Dave Kranzler? I'll pose this one to you. What if JP Morgan issues a research report and they're, trying to get some new order flow for their silver desk? Do you think maybe they would be willing to contribute to the cause? I mean, they paid that $920 million fine, no sweat. So maybe they could put us over 100. We could see it break 100 tonight.
I think if JP Morgan put a buy recommendation on this, that no one would trust it, and that donations would stop.
Which, Dave, obviously raises the question that I know the audience is thinking. Do you think that the ETFs have shorted COMEX futures on the COMEX to hedge this yet?
Well, they already admitted that they have.
What's that?
They already admitted that they shorted, the SLV, which double sold it. I mean, here's JP Morgan. It's one of the custodians. And they're saying we take a position in the futures market, so they're taking a position against the silver they hold, which they shouldn't be doing that at all. They should hold the silver and fulfill their custodial obligations. And they're making money off the side on this. And of course, the regulators are going, "What, me worry?"
Well, now there's 2 claims on that silver to the trust,
Right,
and to whoever they sold short.
Exactly. Wait a second, fellas. Wait. I got to hop in here. I know it's sensitive stuff, so we want to be accurate. David Smith, are you saying that, and actually, Yara, can you enable screen sharing for me now that I have made you the host, please? And David
Yes.
Smith, are you saying that they're not supposed to be shorting COMEX futures against metal that is held for customers, so they would have nothing to hedge? Or are you saying it because it's expressly forbidden in the SLV trust prospectus?
I don't know that it's expressly forbidden, but
David, well, that's why I pulled up this chart here. Actually, in case you haven't seen this, perhaps would you be gracious enough to read the highlighted excerpt from page 10 of the most recent SLV prospectus? Actually, wait, might not be the most recent because apparently they update it in the middle of the night. So please, can you read what came from this one?
Are you asking me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah. In fact, I've seen this, so I just didn't want to go out on a limb. But the trust does not hold or trade in commodity futures contracts or any other instruments regulated by the CEA as administered by the CFTC. Furthermore, the trust is not a commodity pool for purposes of the CEA. So that would sure sound to me like that's pretty solid evidence that they shouldn't be doing that. You know what?
Yara, you've not been spending maybe you have been spending far too much time in the last 2 or 3 years thinking about silver, but since maybe we're just, down our rabbit holes, what is your interpretation of this clause in the prospectus?
As a non-legal mind, it reads pretty clear that it says not hold or trade in commodity future contracts or any other instruments regulated by the CEA. So to me as a layperson, I would say that would be outside of what they're allowed to do.
Yara, you know my buddy Dave
I
Kranzler.
do. Yes.
What do you think? What do you think of the odds he has something to say about this?
Well, I'm a little lost here. Are you referring to the Jeff Curry
Conspiracy
assertions?
theory, bro.
Wait. Are you referring to the Jeff Curry assertions? Because I haven't read anywhere that SLV is shorting futures.
I thought, but they are the shorts.
According to Jeff Curry, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, I
Are you saying
I don't know
Jeff
why he
Curry is
said that,
lying?
because I don't know why he said that. He didn't have any basis for making that assertion. I haven't seen any evidence. I mean, what they are doing is they're naked shorting their shares right now because they can't acquire enough silver to back the shares that they're issuing for when the new money flows in. I honestly don't know why Jeff Curry made that assertion unless JP Morgan or the sponsor of SLV is doing something they're not supposed to be doing. But I haven't seen any evidence that they're doing that. I mean, I could go through, whenever they release their next 10K and go through the footnotes and see what it looks like in there. But if they're shorting futures, it sure seems like they're hiding it. I mean, they don't need to short futures. JP Morgan, shorts plenty of futures as the largest silver trader on the COMEX. But I don't think it's doing it on behalf of SLV.
Dave,
Well, that's kind of what it sounded like to me. And I
definitely
think it might
conspiracy theory.
be a combination of hubris and a Freudian slip. And, those guys, just like Lloyd over there at Goldman, who thinks that he's doing God's work. When you're doing God's work, you can do just about anything and kind of be proud about it, right?
True.
Dave Kranzler, I got to call you out. I'm sorry to do it in front of a couple of thousand people watching, but
Oh man,
there's no chance you can provide any evidence that anybody was selling COMEX futures when the price dropped 10% on Tuesday, February 2nd, in the middle of what multiple dealers have described as panic buying. Andy Schectman said the wildest in his history of the business. That's definitely conspiracy theory. I got to bring it up. There's nothing you can point to that would convince me that there was a lot of volume right as the price spiked, but I will yield the floor to you, sir.
I mean, yeah, there's no question that COMEX market makers are shorting the piss out of silver and gold futures right now, and they certainly were last week. I mean, you can just go kind of reconstruct what happened using, and I haven't been studying the daily open interest reports closely, but and actually, to be honest with you, I'll be interested to see the next COT report that comes out, because based on the last COT report, I mean, again, making the leap of faith that these numbers are being reported accurately by the banks who put these numbers together, the COMEX banks who put these numbers together, it looks like the banks reduced their net short position last week, but those numbers are through Tuesday. We won't see what happened Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, tomorrow, and this upcoming Tuesday until the following Friday. So, so we're basically, because of the way that they report the data, and they certainly could report it real time. They have the systems for it. We're kind of looking in the rearview mirror to try and piece together what happened this past week. But I have no doubt that they were bombing the market with paper, and that's that volume that you're seeing at the bottom of the screen there. And I have no doubt that they were bombing the market with paper last week, and then forcing the stop losses, at the managed money funds, the hedge funds, to trigger, and then covering what they shorted at a lower price and making a lot of money doing it.
Well, that's hard to imagine that could be the case. Although, fortunately, rather than hearing me make more Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan jokes, I'm going to begin my semi-retirement and go behind the scenes. Again, a note for all of those talented people out there who have been speaking freedom and had the creativity and energy to raise. Ooh, let's hit the refresh. Whoa, we break through the 60,000 level in just 2 days. That is truly sensational. It's like somebody wants to get some good marketing about the message of silver and the undervaluation out there. And I congratulate everybody who's doing that. Yara, I'm also really darn proud of you. It was nice the other day seeing you host the show for a while. And we're going to be bringing on other people. I guess that's the whole point of a network, whereas not one guy has to always do it, but you can have great content, great things that people enjoy, great information. And I'm quite sure it will be just fine without me always being there. So with that said, I'm going to go get some tacos, and Yara, you can take questions from the audience. You can ask these silver experts anything you've always wanted to know. And I'm going to enjoy that one of my dreams has come true because, as you well know, I'm a big sports radio fan. And a couple of years ago, when we were wondering if we actually had a business or something that we could continue doing like this, I kept thinking this silver story is so fascinating. And when you share, you can create the interest when you learn how to tell the story. And we have all these great, talented experts who have done such great research. So fortunately, I'm going to let you man the controls and go get dinner. And fellas, I will see you later. Thank you again for being here. And I'll be listening along at home to Silver Talk Radio. And thank you for helping to create that in my life. I feel quite honored to be a part of it, and have fun.
Thanks, Chris. And thanks all of you for being here for apparently my debut hosting. And hi, everyone. We're going to take some live questions here in a little bit. But first, I just got a text that Keith Newmeyer also donated $500 to the billboard. So not only are we getting, bullion companies and individual investors and silver fans, but Keith is also out there tweeting and donating. So that's pretty exciting.
That's very nice, Yara.
Yeah. So, and I'm sure we'll probably see other mining companies follow suit since he's kind of a trendsetter, it seems like, anyway. So, have you guys?
Well, Miles Franklin will donate $1,000 in the next few minutes as soon as I can figure out how to do that. We already donated some, but my wife put it under her name instead of.
I know Chris put our Arcadia ones under his name too, which is totally fine. It's not about the credit; it's about the spreading the message. But
For sure.
Awesome, Andy, and thank you, and everybody in the chat. If you want to if you've already donated, just keep sharing, let's get it out there. Let's make this as big as possible. Let's put them in every city. Maybe
real quick, just to pick up on one of the things that Dave and Dave said, Dave, you said there's no evidence, and I would agree. I didn't view what Jeffrey Christian said as he was going to short the shares of SLV after they were sold. I viewed it as he was going to short the price of silver after they sold the shares to the trust. That's kind of the way that I viewed it. Whether or not he was selling the silver in there twice, that's debatable. But I mean, if they did buy the silver, deliver it to the trust, and then short the hell out of it, bomb the price, and then just buy what they gave to the trust back at a fraction of what they delivered it at, same problem. They're just intervening and not letting the market behave the way it's supposed to. And they also have information that the rest of us don't have, allowing that trade to turn out favorably for them. Any way you look at it, whatever he is doing or whatever he said, if there's any semblance of truth in it, it's beyond unethical, borders illegal, and talk about hubris. I think it was disgusting what he said, whether it be actually naked shorting SLV or shorting the silver in equal amounts just to drive down the price and buy it back at subsidized prices. So I'd like to hear what you think about that.
And whom are you speaking to?
Either one of you.
Dave
or Dave.
Go ahead, Yara, and then I'll chirp in. What do you think?
I was just going to say, pick a Dave. David Smith, would you like to start?
Yeah, well, they're always looking for a way to make some more money, and they don't have really any brakes on their behavior by their regulator compatriots. And, who would have ever thought that banks would end up trying to manipulate LIBOR? I mean, there's nothing that they won't stoop to do. And they've gotten away with this so long. And when you get away with it, it gets easier and easier. And at some point you just think it's going to go on forever. I remember when Barrick would sell forward, 2 or 3 years after the bull market had begun in gold, around 2000, and they lost hundreds of millions of dollars doing that. And then they finally woke up one day and said, this is not working anymore. So it's stunning. It's amoral. And you're dealing with people that will turn on each other like they did with GameStop and go with the people that are trying to take down the other shorts. I mean, they go against their own customers. They'll take a position that's the opposite. So that's just what they are, and it's like the story of the, I know you've heard it before, or maybe you have, but about, what is it? I'm trying to think of the creature. I guess it was a raccoon or something that was going to take a scorpion across. Oh, it was a fox. He was going to take a scorpion across the river, and the scorpion had asked him if they could give him a ride. And he said, well, if I do that, you'll sting me and I'll die. And he said, well, no, he said, I won't sting you because then I would drown. And so the fox said, okay, hop on my back. So they get out in the middle of the river and the scorpion stings him. And, he's got this mortal wound. And he said, well, why did you do that? You're going to drown too. And he says, that's just the way I am, and that's just the way these people are.
So are you saying you wouldn't have JP Morgan manage your accounts?
Absolutely would not.
Speaking of Barrick and shorting, when Blanchard sued Barrick in court for manipulation of the market, immediately Barrick, their lawyers said, "Will we move for dismissal? This isn't. There's nothing behind this." And the judge in federal court in Louisiana, I don't remember how many years ago this was, but the judge basically said, "Well, there's something more to it than meets the eye here. We're going to go to discovery." And upon that statement, the counsel for Barrick said, fine, we did it. You caught us. We've been suppressing the price of gold on behalf of JP Morgan, but they've been doing it at the behest of the US government. So they have sovereign immunity, and therefore by extension, we have sovereign immunity. And the actual results of the case were sealed. The only thing that we did see was that they agreed to close out their hedge book, and they agreed to stop forward selling. You have an admission in public court that they were doing this on behalf of JP Morgan and by extension on behalf of the US government. Now, this was a long time ago, but the moral of the story is that this stuff is happening at a very, very high level. And, again, it's a lot easier to suppress the price of metal, way back then anyway, when no one's buying it. When everyone in the world is buying it, and there's been a light shown upon the demand and the short positions and what's happening on that side of the table, I think the game is drawing to an end. So these things happen. These things are real, and we have to get past the fact of it being conspiracy. It no longer is. It's reality, and it's just a question of overwhelming the shorts with physical buying and information and rhetoric that is finally getting out to the people, which it never has. So I'm very optimistic that this type of discourse, this type of, what's happening with Reddit and all of the GoFundMe and all of the awakening is making a dent. So let's just keep doing it, and I think good things will happen.
I think you're absolutely right, Andy. And there's if you look at catastrophic failures, a lot of times you can go back and you can find, for example, at Tenerife, when those two 747s hit each other, at the airport, and several hundred people died. You look at the elements that built that up, and there were several that in and of themselves did not make much difference. But when they combined, these non-entity elements suddenly achieved critical mass. And at that point, it was almost foreordained that the tragedy was going to occur. And I think the same thing in a different sense, but conceptually, is going on here with the silver. You might say, well, advertising about silver is not that big a deal, or like the chart that I saw earlier today that the colleague sent, where silver is the only metal that has not achieved a new high, and this, they showed copper and and lead and zinc and all that. And here's silver at the bottom, the only one in the red. Those things they're not necessarily game changers in and of themselves, but when you put several things together, suddenly you have a sea change that builds up like a tsunami out at sea. And if it went under your boat 10 miles from the shore, you wouldn't even feel it. When it starts to break on the beach, suddenly there's a whole different thing going on. And you have a massive wave, a destructive wave. And in this case, destructive to the suppression of silver prices.
Thanks, David. Dave, did you have something that you wanted to add?
Well, I was just going to say, in reference to what Andy said, I forgot about the Barrick JP Morgan case, or Barrick Blanchard case. And it, when you see examples like that, real life examples, it just blows my mind that there's so many people of high visibility and that get a lot of credibility that refuse to acknowledge or even believe that gold and silver are manipulated. I mean, it's stunning to me. I mean, really, it's hidden in plain sight. I mean, the Gold Reserve Act established the Exchange Stabilization Fund, and that the purpose of that was to stabilize the trading of currencies, specifically the dollar, and it also lumped gold in there as a currency. And so the Exchange Stabilization Fund, which is a subsidiary of the Treasury, actually has a legal mandate to manipulate gold. And how people don't acknowledge that, it just blows me away. But what's going on right now in terms of whether or not this effort can be successful to blow the lid off the silver market, I mean, it's similar to what happened with the London Gold Pool in the 60s, right? And that's, the London Gold Pool was formed by banks on the LBMA to try and keep the price of gold tied to $35 an ounce, because it kept going above 35 an ounce, because and a big contributor to that was the Bretton Woods Agreement, which said that the U.S. has to have full 100% backing of all the treasury paper that it issues to foreigners. And eventually, I think it was Charles de Gaulle figured it out first, hey, the U.S. Treasury doesn't have enough gold to back all the treasuries that it's issued to foreigners, and it started turning its treasuries in for gold, and that's what kind of got the ball rolling. So, that occurred, as you referenced, at a high level, and it broke the London Gold Pool, and that's what ultimately forced Nixon to close the gold window. And we saw how quickly the price of gold shot up over the next 9 years, right? I mean, it went from 35 to, what was it, 835, I think was the peak, or 875, whatever it was. We could be seeing, a similar impetus now from poor man's gold, which is silver, where we, and again, to me, it just kind of lends more support to my conclusion that this effort, driven on the retail side, could actually work.
I think you're exactly right, Dave.
Well, it seems like it's getting bigger and bigger too, as far as the retail side goes. I know Andy's inbox is slammed. Mine has been out of control. We've been talking to James Anderson, Patrick from in Singapore, getting the other side of the world, and people are posting on Twitter, what they're buying in their country. And as far as a movement goes, I feel like, to your tsunami reference, David, I feel like we're seeing, just the top of that wave as it's coming up, and this isn't stopping. I mean, look at our $60,000 for billboards in under, not even in like under a week. It's been days, and it's only growing faster. And I mean, if you look at the trajectory of the growth of Wall Street silver as an indicator of just, new energy and momentum, I'm really excited about that whole retail situation, as far as really putting the pressure on the other side of the paper equation. So is there anything you guys are noticing as far as, trending, and how you think that could play out with all of this, drain the physical market energy? Andy,
look
do you
at-
want to start with that?
I mean, it's happening. It's already happening. You know, I mean, it makes me a little nervous, to be honest with you, because it wasn't but just a few years ago when the price was driven down on COMEX from 21 to 9 in a couple of days. And when that happened, there was nothing left to sell anywhere across the globe. All the major mints were shut down. The U.S. mint was shut down 8 times. The Canadian and the Austrian mint were working 3 8-hour shifts, 24 hours a day, and were 8 to 12 weeks back ordered. The Perth mint shut down, took no new business that year. And the Rand mint, for the first time in 60 years, ran out of product. And David Smith's partner, David Morgan, my good friend, called me up and said, listen, you know, I know the industry is void of product. I have some silver bars from, or I have a friend rather, who runs a medical device company here in Washington, and their name is Pyromet. They want to throw their hat in the ring because literally there was nothing. I mean, nothing. Every major dealer in North America, really across the globe, was sold out of product. I was getting calls from dealers across Europe saying, listen, all of our supply chains in Germany and Zurich are sold out. Is there anything you can do for us? All of the mints had no product. You know, and this is, the price had just fallen by 60% in a matter of a week. Well, David Morgan calls me and says, listen, this group Pyromet, well, they've been in the medical device industry for years, and they have a huge stash of silver. And they want to make 100-ounce bars. Well, they were the ugliest 100-ounce bars you've ever seen. In fact, they didn't even say, they said 100 ounces and nothing else. Pyromet, 100 ounces. You didn't know 100 ounces of what. But that's all the industry had to sell for a period of time at all. And, you know, I guess it makes me nervous. Be careful what you wish for, because while it will have an effect, certainly, you know, if we see that, and we have seen it, and when you get a guy like me get up on and say, hey, the industry can run out of product, that's, you know, a lot of people say, yeah, bullshit. He's just saying that to spur on sales. Well, I will remind everyone what happened in 2008. And if it weren't for David Morgan, David Smith's partner, there would have been nothing. I'm talking nothing to sell for months on end, the whole second half of 08. And, you know, the US mint, the Canadian mint, none of them would let us transact any business at all. And when they finally came back online months later, the premium, and this was the first time I'd ever seen that, with $9 silver, you couldn't buy a silver coin for 18 bucks, under 18 bucks anywhere in North America. And then you'd also have to wait 8 weeks to get it. So you'd call up and you'd say, hey, you know, I hear you're now taking orders. Fine. Silver's at $9. I need 18 bucks. You need to pay up front. You're not going to get it for 2 months. That was real. That happened. And that was with a fraction of the demand that we see now and the fraction of the interest that's in this industry now. So when I get up here and say this can happen, trust me, it already has happened. And when these mints, like the US and the Canadian mint, which have already proven to be the model of inefficiency this year, when they run out of product, you know, that's 2 of the 6 major mints in the world who are out of product. And bottom line is simply this, that these types of things can happen. What effect will it have on COMEX? That remains to be seen. But remember, you can't even get 1,000-ounce bars right now without waiting 4+ weeks. That's unheard of. So all of the things that keep happening lead me to believe we're a lot closer to that shortage squeeze on the retail side than people want to give it credit for.
Well, thank you for that, Andy. What about you, Kranzler? Do you think that the pressure from the retail sector will make its way over into the paper markets, or do you think that they're so diverged at this point that the paper's going to do what it's going to do and people are going to pay what they're going to pay to get metal that they want?
No, we've already seen that. I mean, last week, the price of gold was attacked on the COMEX about as aggressively as I've seen since, you know, 2011, 2012, 2013. And especially early in the week, silver was outperforming gold by quite a bit, even on the COMEX. So, and it, you know, if you don't believe me, you can go back, you know, you can pull up whatever duration chart for last week. You know, you go to the COMEX website and pull it up, and you'll see that that most of the price decline occurs either starting right after the AM London price fix or right after the COMEX opens. I bet you, and again, this is off the top of my head, I'll bet you 60-70% of the price decline in gold and silver last week happened right after, after the COMEX floor started, opened up for the day. It's 8:20 New York time for gold and 8:30 for silver. So, but I mean, even through Friday, silver has been outperforming gold for the whole month of February. So, to me, and I remember, I don't know, probably Tuesday or Wednesday last week, I was looking at the prices of gold and silver. I'm like, wow, silver's really hanging in there. This silver squeeze movement is definitely, having an effect. And then finally on Thursday and Friday, silver got popped for about $2, but still, I'm sure as David and Andy know, back in 2008, when they were making an aggressive effort to get the price of gold and silver down in the paper markets. I mean, there were days when silver would be down $2 or $3 at a time, and it would bounce after that. But I think, I guess the point here is that we're already seeing the effect that this movement is having in terms of their ability to manipulate the price of silver using paper.
David Smith, do you like to add anything?
Yeah, I have a question for Andy. That 2008-9 was a near-death experience, and we all remember that, the massive premium for all the metals above the real price, the paper price. What would it take, and what would it look like for something to happen where this model was broken and couldn't be put back together again? Is that possible, as opposed to we have a shortage for a few weeks or a month or 2 months, and then they get back up off the mat again? Or what does it take to completely disassemble what has gone before so that you just can't put it back together again?
More and more demand. Remember that all of this stuff has happened. All of my reflections go back, when I started really being aware of the manipulation of the precious metals market. I've been a big supporter of Bill and Chris, Murphy and Powell and Gatta for a long time, in La Metropole Cafe. But really, it was largely in 2007 and 8 when this happened. Because, ask yourself a question, and then I'll answer that. But ask yourself a question: how is it that silver could fall by 65% or so at the same time gold fall by 30%? Which would be indicative of massive selling, right? If the price of something falls like a waterfall, you think that the product is being dumped onto the marketplace. Was furthest thing from the truth. It was a paper drive-by shooting, and all the product disappeared. And it became obvious to me that the price was being controlled on COMEX, had very little, if anything, to do whatsoever with the physical demand. And if there was such a lack of demand, they move inverse of one another. Why is it that there was no supply anywhere across the entire globe? But let's remember, when we talk about this in 08, you were right in the middle of about 0.5% of the US public investing in precious metals. And that's something that I talk about a lot. And Rick Rule talks about how in 1980, with gold at 850 and the Dow at 850, the last time they crossed at 1-to-1, you had an 8% allocation to precious metals across the whole US financial matrix, from the individual investor all the way to the Harvard endowment fund. Everything in between had 8% of their assets invested in metals. And when we get to COVID 2020, before COVID starts, that's 0.5%. And I would argue in 2008, it wasn't much further away from that. So in 2008, when everything disappeared globally for months on end, the average allocation to metals was 0.5%. I would argue that since COVID, that number has regressed. And, the average over that 40-year period is 2.5%. So just regressing to the mean, to the 2.5%, is a 5-fold increase in demand in this industry. What happens if that number goes back to 8%? What if all of a sudden people wake up and say, my God, it's just a Ponzi scheme. We need to get some metal. And that number goes to 1 out of, or 10 out of 100, 1 out of 10. What if it goes to 10%? A 10% allocation of metals across the whole financial US matrix, in this case, is a 20-fold increase the market will blow up. There will be nothing left for anybody. It's not that far away. And at that point, I don't know how you put the pieces back together, because we're dealing with a depletion in mine supply and an increase in demand, especially on the industrial side. And what other asset is there out there that has massive demand bracketing both sides of not only monetary demand, but also the industrial demand? And I keep coming back to fact of this new Chinese Belt Road and Rail Initiative, which is underway right now. It is the largest infrastructure project ever attempted in human history. It's connecting 65% of the global population, 40% of GDP, connecting Asia and Africa. The need for silver is expanding dramatically. It's not just roads and bridges and maritime channels they're building. It's also infrastructure, which is going to need massive amounts of silver in a digital world. So to answer your question, David, it's closer than we think, because the demand is expanding with the Green New Deal, the largest infrastructure project in human history, at a time when the supply is decreasing. And the awakening, thanks to Chris, thanks to you and David, thanks to everyone out there who's spreading the word, and the Reddit group, the demand is increasing, the supply is decreasing, and the need for silver is exponentially increasing. So you tell me, if that can happen when there's less than 1% allocation to silver and gold, and it can fall by 60% and everything disappear, what happens when that number increases as it has? And I would argue and submit we are a lot closer to that happening than I'd like to give credit for, and then I think most people would believe.
That's amazing, Andy. And, we're at a point now, I think, where a finite effort on the part of people can yield an infinite result. The collection of finite efforts could yield an infinite outcome.
Yes, for sure.
There's one easy way for David's scenario to occur where the system gets blown apart. If a relatively high percentage of entities who have taken delivery of silver on the COMEX but have left their bars in the COMEX, if they would just remove those bars from the COMEX for private safekeeping, that it would blow up the COMEX.
There you go.
Well, those bars, when they are delivered, they come with a warrant saying that they do not belong to the COMEX any longer, that they belong to the individual. And that is a question that I'm struggling with. Why the hell are they if they're taking delivery, why leave them there to be messed with? And I think that's probably step number 2. I think if things get much scarier, but when you talk about taking possession of, 1 million ounces of silver, that's no small feat. You're talking, 1,000 ounces a piece. That's no small feat and a lot of weight. So, but I would agree with you, David, that that is the one confusing thing, other than to say those bars do not belong. They are no longer in the eligible category. They belong to the people who took possession of them, but they should be out of the house for sure. And that's the one piece of removal of counterparty risk here that I think is missing. And if these folks were smart, they would tune in here and listen to what we're saying and get it out of the COMEX warehouse depositories altogether, whether or not title belongs to them and no longer to the COMEX, warrant aside. But that is a confusing tidbit that I've yet to wrap my head around.
Well, I mean, a warrant is basically, that's proof of ownership, but that doesn't mean that bar hasn't been warranted to several different parties at the same time. That's
correct.
Part of
the rehypothecation. Yes.
Yeah. The warrant is just, to me, a warrant is just another form of a derivative. So, but for an investment fund or a hedge fund or a family office who's taken delivery of bars and have left it in the COMEX, because the COMEX incentivizes you to leave your bars in the COMEX because their storage fees are cheaper than any of the other Delaware depositories. I mean, like my fund keeps its bullion in a private Delaware depository, but I believe that vault in Texas that has been built, I think it's finished. I think the primary impetus behind that was the Texas Teachers State Retirement Fund. They wanted to take delivery. I think Kyle Bass might have been the guy who pushed that. they wanted to buy physical gold and take delivery of it instead of invest in GLD, and they needed a place to keep it that they could trust. So
They did.
and if you're
That's right.
if you're a hedge fund or a wealthy entity that has bars sitting in the COMEX, you don't need to keep it in an official vault or a Brinks vault. I mean, you can provide for your own safekeeping. It's not cheap to get it started, but once you have it, it's there.
The other issue, I guess, potentially is the illiquidity side of things. It shouldn't be, but once you pull it outside the chain of custody of a COMEX depository, in theory, at that quantity, you have assays and that kind of stuff that would need to be done. But here again, if they believe that this is really as big of a deal as it is to take delivery, you're right. They should run for the hills, as far as I'm concerned.
They really want to own it. That's what they need to do.
Are the teachers' funds and other pensions and things that where large groups of people are relying on the dividends of that for the rest of their lives? Is the only option for them to take COMEX deliveries or to get it off the COMEX, or would they actually buy from private, dealers as well if the mechanism wasn't working for them to get it off the COMEX?
Look, the Ohio Police and Fire pension put 5% of 800 million, I think, or 5% of 4 billion. I think the total, it was 800 million bucks, I think, that they put into GLD. Well, they shouldn't have done, but they did. But at least you have some entities waking up. If that money went into the physical market overnight, it'd be drained. There'd be literally things would just disappear overnight. That's how thin this market really is. There'd be nothing left. If $800 million came in tonight went to all of the online dealers in the United States, there would be nothing left tomorrow morning at the open. Nothing. And so that's how thin this market is and how close we could be to it. And then all of a sudden you get some mints shut down or decide not to play ball, and it's over just like that, because there's no secondary market action right now. No one is selling back to us at all. The only selling that we've been getting are people selling their gold to buy silver.
Yeah.
That's it.
I had one question, but he wasn't actually wanting to sell. He was just wondering, if I was going to sell, what would it be over spot right now? Because I think a lot of people are interested in that too, seeing how high the premiums are on the buy side. They're wondering what it would, what is the premium on the sell side? And Andy, I know you've spoken to that a couple of times, that it's higher than it's been.
As an example, I'm right now paying on people who are trading, where we will make no money buying back the gold. We're paying as high as 5% over spot on gold buffaloes and gold eagles. So that's what I've been selling them for the past, God knows how long. So when you talk about silver eagles, you're way getting up above $5 an ounce and above spot when people want to sell that, or higher. I haven't looked today, but I will simply tell you that everything is markedly higher above the price of silver. You are getting a bid price today on everything we sell higher than what we would have sold them to you for in the beginning of 2020, before COVID started. So those premiums will rise with the high ask prices. You'll get the high bid prices too. So they range or vary from product to product, just like the silver eagle is so much more expensive than the other forms of silver. But anything you're selling, you'll get way higher, way above the price of the underlying content, or above spot or melt right now, as high as I've ever seen it in 31 years, for sure. And anyone who says you're going to get spot when you sell it, they're very wrong. And if a company tells them that, call us. They'll find out real quickly that that's not right.
I know you've spoken to the fact that a lot of local coin shops end up selling what they buy to you because they don't have the ability to hedge. Have you seen any traffic from that? Like, are people doing that on a local level, or do you think people are just buying locally too? Because it seems like what we're hearing, people are only buying, but I just didn't know if with your inside info that you were getting hit up by any of those guys at all.
Not as much, only on really large deals where they're not able to hedge it and they don't want the risk. Most of the people I talk to in our chain of small shops are telling me that they want to, just put a sign on the door saying, we will only limit what we will sell to you, because they'll run out of product in a matter of days. They'll have nothing to sell, and they will sit there with empty cases, and no one's coming in and selling to them. It's a rare example when people come in to sell to those shops. They're in a kind of a tricky position because most of those shops aren't buying at the level the big companies are. They rely upon secondary market and to the large degree. And right now that's pretty much non-existent. In years past, it represented a good deal of the stuff, a good portion of the stuff that we took in. We have relationships with over 1,000 coin shops all around the country that we've built over 30 years. And it's the lowest amount of volume coming in from those shops as I've ever seen. They too do some gold to silver swaps, and we'll buy, someone comes in and sells 50 ounces of gold. They don't want to hedge that. They can't hedge it, and they don't want the exposure. We'll buy that. But we're not seeing the junk silver like we used to. We're not seeing the silver eagles like we used to. We're not seeing any of the stuff that used to come in left and right from these shops, because in essence, all they're getting is people buying and nobody selling. Run out of product real quick.
Anecdotally, I haven't been in a local coin shop for quite a while. I probably should go survey a few of them around where I live, but I've had friends here in Denver tell me that their coin shops that they normally go to are wiped out of silver.
Right.
Steve, do you want to go? Do you want to go on a coin shopping mission, and we'll go do some recon, check out all the shops around Denver and Golden?
Yeah, well, that might be a good idea. I was thinking Rocky Mountain Coin. The next time I'm down in Denver, I'd like to see what their thing looks like. And there's a coin shop in downtown Golden that I was in, I don't know, probably about 18 months ago, maybe 12 months ago. I probably should go check them out too.
We're hearing lots of stories in the chat of people who have gone to their local coin shops and cleaned them out, or are experiencing going there and basically being in line, or things that they haven't experienced, in any recent, not since I've been involved. I wasn't around in 2008. I wasn't, I didn't know that the dentist and David Morgan, the silver guru, saved the day. But who's going to save the day now when this stuff breaks, if that's the case? Is there any kind of secret silver stash that we're not aware of that might come into the market, or are we seeing basically just like empty vaults and empty spaces?
It would take much higher prices to pry a good deal out. And kind of what Dave said, I'm expecting when silver gets near 50, you will see, both Dave said it, David Smith said he would expect there to be some selling on its way up to 50, which would suppress it. I think that's true. A lot of people who have held on for a long time at 50 may sell. I don't think it's the last stop. Again, let's just remember that the 150-year average, roughly, a gold to silver ratio is, let's call it 42 to 1, 43 to 1, 45 to 1, anywhere in that neighborhood. Take the price of gold right now, divide it by 45. That's where silver should be right now. But as Keith Newmeyer is saying, it's coming out of the ground at 8 to 1. So it could be 8 times that. Silver is way undervalued. And as it moves up, I think a lot of people, once it reaches that $50 or close to it, will sell. And you'll see some more product in the industry. But I don't see there being a magic bullet right now, especially when you realize that we're running continual deficits, and with this new green agenda and the Belt and Road Initiative and on and on and on, guys like Tesla companies like Tesla talking about buying silver and securing it for its future productivity in batteries, and Apple and Samsung and what have you, and an expansion into the monetary side and an awakening by Reddit and everyone else. I don't see there being a magic bullet this time. And that's the part that, that's why I've said the things that I've been saying for a long time about difficulty getting product, to me being the central focus, or will be, of this market moving forward, because of those types of fundamentals. And there's the demand. You can't even really explain to someone what it's like in this industry right now, and largely younger people, which is icing on the cake. You have a whole generation of people who are waking up to this that can very quickly skew the recency bias, skew the percentage of people allocating a percentage of their assets to precious metals, and turn this on its head real quick. But I don't see there being a magic bullet. I really don't.
By the way, I said I'd think about selling some silver when it hits 50, but I honestly don't know that I would. The funny thing is I bought this off of eBay.
Oh, hey,
It's
Thomas.
it was refined by refined by Degussa. But and I paid, it was when I think you could buy Silver Eagles for $28. I think I paid like $39 for it. And I was like, well, it's a novelty item and I want to have it. It's a collectible. And now I see it, if I can find them, it would cost me $37 to buy a Silver Eagle. So, we could easily see the retail price of silver go into the $40 over the next, the $40 handle over the next several weeks.
Completely agree.
Dave, I know you focus a lot on the mining stocks too, since I'm a subscriber. But with all of this retail pressure, is that changing the way mining companies are starting to look at the future? Like, are you starting to see that reflect in, maybe their projections or anything that you look at when you're valuing mining companies, as far as just the retail interest and maybe this whole silver squeeze movement? Is that transferring on to their projections or at all?
I don't think so. And if it is, they're keeping it a big secret amongst themselves. But it's amazing to me how agnostic most of the mining executives that I've run into are about the price of the product they sell. And I know a couple of exceptions to that rule where they won't, they'll close down a mine shaft if it's not a particular mine, if it's not breaking even. But most of them just seem to be, they're like on the treadmill. They're just produce as much as they can, and if they find a new vein system, they attack that right away. And they're not ounces in the ground people too much. It's just it's a little bit surprising.
And Kranzler, what about you?
I think that's probably more true for the CEOs that are running companies that are actually producing silver.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously Keith Neumeyer's the exception out here, so he's not lumped into that crowd, and a couple others. But I spend most of my time talking to junior exploration and development companies, and most of the CEOs, typically off the record, and I wouldn't identify specific names, but they're aware of the manipulation, and that most of them are not agnostic on the price of gold and silver. Most of them believe that it's going to go a lot higher. Now that it may be some bias there, because obviously the value of their project depends on the future price of gold and silver. But these guys understand what's going on, and they understand about the manipulation. And they, so most of those guys are very optimistic that we're going to see much higher prices down the road. Especially when you hear things like, most of the active mines down in Mexico are getting mined out of silver, and you really need to bring on more mining capacity, and governments, including the Mexican government, are starting to make it more difficult to do that.
Do you think, Dave, the reason there isn't more pushback by the mining executives is because they're just too overextended and need the cash to continue to stay afloat? And if they hold back supply, they're just ending up cutting off their nose to spite their face. Do you think that's part of the reason?
That's a good question. When I think about the answer to that question, I think about the guys running companies like Barrick and Newmont, and I look at those as just, they're like the General Motors of the mining industry. They're huge, bureaucratic, inefficiently run organizations. They make bad decisions. I've seen these companies sell projects or let projects go that juniors come in and develop and end up reselling it back to the companies at a huge premium. So I think for companies like Barrick and Newmont, I don't think the CEOs give a rat's ass where the price of gold and silver is, as long as they can get it out of the ground, sell it at a profit, and get their stock options. I really believe that they honestly are only driven by how much money that they can make personally by running those businesses. I do think that, maybe part of the reluctance of operating, producing mining companies to come out and speak out against the manipulation is that, the federal government holds, regulatory initiatives again over their head, right? It's like you got a big mine operating in Nevada on federal land, and you're out here telling us that the government's manipulating silver. How about if or gold? How about if we make it more difficult to keep your mine open? Things like that. And I again, that's something I could never prove, but I'm sure you've had those conversations before. I've had those conversations with guys like Chris Powell, where we think that, a lot of these, again, not the Barrick and Newmont guys, but a lot of the mid-tier and larger cap company CEOs are just afraid of some sort of rebuke from the government if they come out and criticize the government and the Federal Reserve for being involved in the manipulation of the metals.
Dave, I think you're right on that. However, it's all about how the message is framed. And I think it would be very easy to say, we regard silver as honest money. We are going to keep a reserve of honest money, just like we would cash in the bank. And we regard that as being equivalent. And there would be no political connotation attached to that. And they wouldn't have to worry about blowback, I think,
I think that's right. But I don't think you'll ever see Barrick or Newmont do that.
No.
But certainly there are companies that do hold back some of their production on their balance sheet. Like I said, I was looking at SSR Mining's financials last night, and they produced a lot more than they actually sold in the fourth quarter. And I've seen them in the past actually publicly announce that they were going to keep some of their silver because they thought the price was going higher. So, ultimately, I guess to circle back to where we started the whole podcast, it would be to these companies' benefit to do that, because the silver that they withhold now from the market, they'll be able to sell it at a much higher price, down the road.
Absolutely. And, it still amazes me that there's no light bulbs going off for those people. And I think of Robert Friedland, who told some friends, he said, buy copper ingots and stuff them in the joists of the home you're building. And in a few years, you'll be able to rip out the wall boards and sell the copper and buy a fleet of Lamborghinis. But I mean, he's always ahead of the curve on things. But why don't these people realize the tremendous value and the intrinsic value that silver has always had, that they are digging out of the ground and get it, to even keep a little bit back. I mean, I hold this stuff in my hand, or I hold native silver in my hand when I'm down on a mining tour in Mexico. And I'm amazed by what I have in my hand. And these people act like, oh, it's a piece of iron. I mean, they don't value it. I don't get that.
It's been an enigma that has been discussed since I started in the industry in 2001. And I agree with you. I don't know why that light bulb doesn't go off. And the only thing I can use to explain that is, they'd still rather sell as much gold and silver as they can to boost their personal compensation. So,
right.
And a lot of them are probably still terrified of a lot of those guys that were around in the early 80s and through 2000, and there may be some residual fear over something like that happening again, which I don't think is even possible.
Well, I mean,
happen again. But
how about just one of them opens their damn mouth, other than Keith Neumeyer, and just talk about it and say, we see this happening and we're not happy about it, and threaten to do it. If we don't see this change, we're going to do our part. I mean, you don't even hear anyone talking about it. And that to me is somewhat troublesome also. And here again, when you get one of the things, when I was involved in helping bring the Sprott vault chain product to market, one of the things that I liked about the product was the whole flow chart. When we did the Genesis trade for for all of you crypto people out there know more than me, that would be the first trade done on a distributed ledger. We were involved in the Genesis trade, where a lot of the insiders, the Tradewin folks and the folks that were equity partners in the Tradewin Vault Chain product. This is the One Gold product, and Kitco does it too. Miles Franklin was involved at the very, very, very beginning. I'm going to greatly understate the flow chart, but this is basically how it worked. When we did the Genesis trade, Gold Corp, which is one of the equity partners, pulled a bunch of gold out of their Red Lake mine, I think it's in British Columbia, and they sent it directly to the Royal Canadian Mint, where it was immediately checked in and put onto the ledger in Dore fashion. So it wasn't even refined gold yet, but they knew what they would get out of it after refining and put that amount on the ledger. And what that did was disintermediate several of the steps along the way, including the investment banks that are involved in it, and basically brought the gold from the ground to the end user just like that. Now, it had to be refined if indeed an end user wanted to actually take possession, but there are a lot of other ways that could have happened. I guess what I'm simply getting at is that is what the future would be, perhaps, is if we can find disintermediation of the whole system where the mines go directly to the end user. And Keith Newmeyer does that a little bit. You can buy silver from them. That, to me, is how you would get some traction. Just start selling what you're pulling out of the ground directly to the public and disintermediate all of the steps in between. And I think it's possible. I think that would be a good step. And companies that would start paying dividends in gold and silver and that kind of stuff would be a good way to also add fuel to the fire. But these are things that have always perplexed me, why we don't see more of the mining executives realizing that this would be great and get more involved with the end users and the people that are clamoring for change in the marketplace.
Andy, I was privileged to be at one of the meetings where you presented, and Rick Roll and Tradewin, when they were talking about this before the rollout of Vault Chain Gold and Vault Chain Silver, and it was just fascinating. And when you saw the number of steps that were taken out of the middle, the man in the middle, so to speak, I think it was like of a normal 11 or 12 steps between gold ore in the ground and ore at the Royal Mint. Instead of 11, they took out 7 or 8 of those steps.
4. Yep, 4 steps.
It's just unbelievable, and it wouldn't take that much. It just takes someone that's a visionary to get that going and say, I'm going to do this with my company. And, and maybe before that, maybe somebody in a pension, because, you could take the registered silver off the COMEX and put it with a fabricator and store it there as 1,000-ounce bars. And then you wouldn't have to have it reassayed, or you could have them make it into 100-ounce bars and store it, and it would change. It would start changing things. And I'm just amazed that of all the creative stuff that's going on in cryptocurrencies and everything else, while no one has stepped forward to do some of the things that you and I and others are discussing.
Yeah.
Thanks
exactly.
for all of that insight, you guys. We have a couple of questions from the chat if you're ready for a little rapid fire as we're checking in on the silver and gold prices.
I'm going to have to take off here in a second.
Okay. Well, thank you for spending your Sunday afternoon with us. I know you have dinner that you're running off to prepare. What's on the menu tonight, Dave?
It's a Middle Eastern garbanzo bean pureed soup.
Oh, wow. Like hummus soup?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah. It'll be a
Wow.
little spicier than
Sounds
standard
good.
hummus.
That sounds awesome.
I've never made it before, so I don't know how long it's going to take. I'm just going to take longer than the recipe says it'll take for sure.
Well, throw it in the Instant Pot and it'll be instant.
I wish I could. But I'd like to hear a couple questions first.
Cool. Well, we have a super chat here from New Engineering. He wants to know if it's possible that the shortage of silver is what's leading to the shortage of computer chips and stopping the auto industry. Do either of you guys have any opinion on that?
I have no clue, to be honest.
I think that first of all, I think a lot of these high-tech companies probably just buy recycled silver or something. not refined silver. So I think the chip shortage occurred, and I forget, maybe it was Taiwan Semiconductor. One of the big chip fabricators had a massive fire, and that's what stopped the chip production. So
Okay, it's good to know.
yeah, I don't think that, the scarcity of silver is involved. I mean, there's not a ton of silver that's used in applications. It's just that there's a lot of applications that use silver. So these companies, in order to produce a chip, should be willing to pay a lot higher price for silver if there was a shortage that was affecting them.
Cool. Thank you for that. Andy, we've got a physical silver and gold question for you. I know you've been talking a lot about how gold is become hard to source as well. We had a question from Eric Hoffner wanting to know what's harder to get right now, silver or gold?
For me, gold eagles and gold buffaloes and gold maple leafs are next to impossible. I can get them, but it's hard, really hard. I can't get gold buffaloes. 2021 gold maple leafs are four plus weeks out. Gold buffaloes just can't get. Gold eagles, yeah, I can get them. Takes some time, a couple weeks maybe. There's still some floating out there, the 2021s, but I have had a harder time getting gold than I have had getting silver. That doesn't mean that won't change sometime soon, but I find it to be interesting that everyone's focused on silver, and I find it maybe more difficult to get gold right now. I also find it mildly more disconcerting, because if you can't get 1,000-ounce bars and you're having a harder time getting gold, that to me speaks of big money accumulating metal. Not to say silver isn't accumulated by big money, but it's a whole lot easier to spend $10 million and get gold than it is to acquire 10 million in silver in terms of the logistics. So tough to get. What's the craziest part about that, Yara, is that you never see that happen in January, February, ever. This would be October, November, as they are running out of that year's allocation, preparing for the next year's allocation. And again, like I mentioned the other day, I can't say where I heard this, but a fairly good source told me they expect the US Mint to be shut down for as long as 2 months starting in April, as they, for whatever stupid reason, have to prepare for the next type 2 silver and gold eagle, why they have to shut down for an extended period of time. If that happens, and I have no proof that this is reality, just what I was told from a very good source, that if that does happen, you will see massive shortages in physical in the United States. Massive. If we can't get anything out of the US Mint, then what happens is everyone clamors for the other stuff. Then that disappears. And that's how it's always happened in the past. So gold's tougher to get, but I don't think we've seen anything yet. If I had to guess, it gets tougher to get.
I've got 2 points to add to that, and then I got to take off. But what we're seeing happen in silver right now actually started happening in gold in March. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And they were blaming the shortage on the virus crisis and the refiners temporarily shutting down. But that was a bunch of BS, because we knew before March that there were widespread reports coming out of London for several months prior to that very wealthy entities, private offices, wealthy individuals, et cetera, were taking delivery of their gold and taking it off removing it from London vaults. And back then, India and China weren't, so if you go late 2019, early 2000, early 2020, China and India weren't a big factor in terms of what they were importing back then. And then all of a sudden, India started importing pretty aggressively, I think like October, November 2020, and they haven't stopped. And we never, you never see, India usually takes a pause in February. And from the numbers that I see every day, India is still, importing full bore right now. And China was basically dormant in terms of importation, at least the importation that we can track through Hong Kong. We don't know what goes through Beijing. China was basically dormant since last February. And all of a sudden, China kind of woke up over the last 2 or 3 weeks. So that's going to put further stress on the market, because China and India don't leave their bars when they buy gold, they import it. The bars don't stay in London, they go into the countries. So that's required deliveries. And then the second point is, and I wrote a blog post about it that I had you kind of check to make sure I didn't say anything that was outlandish in there. But quite honestly, if the mints are having trouble getting supply, silver blanks, in order to make silver eagles and silver maple leafs, shouldn't they be raising the price they're willing to pay? And let's find out at what price could they get enough silver to produce the demand. And you pointed it out, the U.S. Mint by law is required to produce enough silver to fulfill demand. So you're basically seeing a de facto force majeure in the U.S. silver market, but at least at the mint. And honestly, I think if the bullion dealers and what are they called, approved purchasers, the ones that the wholesalers that buy from the mint, it's really up to them to put pressure on the mint to say, hey, look, I need product to sell. I have demand for it. People are willing to pay a higher price. Raise your damn price that you're willing to pay. Go to the refiners and say, hey, I'll pay you $30 for blanks. $26 isn't getting it done. I'll pay you $36 for blanks. Tell me what price it would take to get blanks so that I can produce enough silver to satisfy the demand that I'm getting. I've got guys knocking on my door constantly. You know what I mean?
Dave, are you talking about real world price discovery? Is that what you're
that was the
asking
point
for?
of my blog post.
No, it was a great blog, and I thought it was spot on. Last year, the Treasury Secretary, who is supposed to deem what the demand and the supply situation is, it did go, I believe, and ask Congress to, I think it was Congress, they asked to pay up to 50 cents more in the open market for silver blanks. But here again, when you look at, you can't buy an ounce of silver right now for under $5 silver. We're $5 away from even a semblance of price discovery in terms of real world. So, and probably much higher in that. So yeah, I think that's a great point. But when does that happen? That's the same, along the same vein as when do the mining executives stand up and say, enough is enough. Maybe we're getting closer to all these things than we think. And the more that we talk about it, and the more that the people out there talk about it, the more
you guys
understand it.
Jeff Curry is in the chat and he wants to know, who do you all think you are trying to squeeze a $200 trillion industry? So,
hang on a sec. I gotta take off. It was Yara, Andy, Dave. It's great chatting with you guys. Look forward to next time.
Thank you so much, Dave. Enjoy your dinner. If you love the recipe, send it to me, please.
I will. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Stay well, Dave.
Good to see you.
And so, yeah, Jeff Curry wants to know who we think we are trying to squeeze a $200 trillion industry. So you guys can show him who we think we are.
Is that Jeff Curry from Austin, Texas?
I'm not sure where Jeff Curry's from. Maybe from Mars. But we did also have another comment that I want to give a shout out to, which was that we should have these Sunday chats in the Hopin platform like Silverfest. And that's a great idea. And we love Hopin and we love doing, video chats. So look out for that potentially in the future. Although in all honesty, these are a little easier to put together. So
I think Hopin is limited to like 150 or so people, I think. Maybe I'm wrong.
We had 3,100 people at Silverfest.
Oh.
It's only limited to the number of people that can interact in the sessions.
Okay.
So I mean, there are limitations, but we had over 3,000 people at Silverfest, which gives me goosebumps still thinking about. So what a fun party. So I love getting to do this, live with you guys though. On a Sunday. It's just something that we can all just pop in, and then Dave can go make dinner and Chris can go get tacos and do brilliant things behind the scenes that I'm sure we'll find out about when he pops back on. But we do have
bash it. That's why I say it's incredibly unlikely.
Yeah.
He's back apparently.
He's a
So
comedian.
are you guys up for taking a couple of more questions?
Yeah, I got time. I got
All
time.
right, great. So if you guys want to drop some new questions in the chat, they're going by so fast. Help me out here. All right, let's find a new one.
I'll look too.
So I know we had talked about the Perth Mint going down and then had heard for maintenance, but then had heard that they were maybe had gotten that taken care of. And I know, Andy, you've spoken to the rumor that the US Mint might shut down. Are you hearing anything from any of the other sovereign mints?
No, I'm not. Not at this point. Nope.
Cool. Let's
Not at this point.
move on to another one. Sorry, guys, they're going so fast. Oh, we have an update that the Scottsdale Mint just donated $5,000 to Billboard. So we're getting, everybody's getting involved in the Silver Squeeze movement. That's awesome.
That is so nice to hear.
Yeah. So we'll maybe do a check-in on that total here in a minute if my producer behind the scenes wants to check that out for us. Let's see. Do you guys have questions? I'm seeing lots and lots of comments. Andy, this one's for you, and I know you've spoken to this, but what percentage increase of sales have you had for this month compared to previous months? I know you were talking about to previous years, which it was equivalent to at times, but what do you have a kind of percentage estimate on what that looks like?
I don't. I can tell you that
But it's a lot.
Probably 5x from anything I've ever seen, but this was our biggest month ever. And and it's a short month. I guess one of the big differences is, we're not an online company. So for an online company, it's different. They're 24/7. We're typically not, although we are now. And getting no rest on Saturdays and Sundays, taking orders all weekend long is different. I don't know the percentage, Yara, but it's really hard to explain. It's unlike anything I can really explain to people, but simply to say it's many times greater than anything I've ever seen in 31 years, ever. And this month by far it was the most chaotic and the most frenzied. People are really concerned. And you know what? People know that the premiums are high, and people know that there's problems with delivery and there's delays because everything's jammed up. They don't care. It's just getting their orders in. And again, this is just an awakening by a group of people who have never noticed it before that are now realizing it's a great story. So I expect it to grow. I expect this to be just the very, very beginning. And so I don't think the story is written yet, at least the end of it.
Andy, with your mention of the Mint closing down for a couple months to retool for the American Silver Eagle, this could be the crunch point where all these other things are coming together and what's going on with the advertising here and whatnot. And there may be a gap that can't even remotely be filled if people step up to the plate with their small orders in mass.
For sure. No question about it. I mean, there's 6 major mints in the world: US, Canada, Austria, Australia, South Africa, United Kingdom. And you pull one of those mints off the table, you've just cut a considerable amount of supply, and especially here in North America. So if that does happen, I look for supply issues to be really, really severe.
We have a great question here from Ollie. He wants to know, has the panel considered the inflow of money into metals as the end of the crypto bull run? He says, I, for one, will be putting my profits into silver. Andy, I know you take Bitcoin. Have you seen any uptick in people trading their digital currencies for physical?
Yes, a tremendous amount. And I think that's wise. I don't think it's the end of the crypto run at all, but I think people who are making crazy profits in crypto, which is a new form of wealth, ought to pull some of those profits off and buy historical wealth. And take some chips off the table. You don't have to pull your initial investment off or even anything close to it, but to continually pull some of that profit off means you'll walk away a winner. And I think that's important. And a lot of people are doing that. The reason we take Bitcoin is not because we want to stockpile it ourselves. I'm not giving my 2 cents on Bitcoin, simply to say it's hedgeable on the COMEX market. Therefore, I can hedge risk when we accept it. So we are not risking agreeing to a price in Bitcoin, then only to, by the time the phone call is over, have lost everything, or the client, paid 2-3 times what they should. We can hedge it and then take an order in Bitcoin. So yes, we've seen a big uptick in people using Bitcoin to buy silver, a really big uptick.
Awesome. I have another physical question for you. And this one's actually from Chris in the chat. He wants to know, what's the best way for people to convert their stimulus checks into silver?
Give a call and place an order, I guess.
Just do it.
I guess make a decision to do it. And
there's
that's not a bad idea.
There's a follow-up question to that, which is, what is the most economical silver purchase at this point? I know for a while, the constitutional silver was at a really low premium. That's not the case anymore. What would you think for people who are trying to get the most silver for their stimulus? What would you recommend that they would buy?
I think people should always be weary of being penny wise and pound foolish, or leery of anyway. And that being, normally you could buy a big bar and save some money. Number one, the refineries can't keep up and don't have the firepower that the sovereign mints do. And so the premiums on the big bars, that both the 10 and the 100-ounce bar, have reached the same level as the 1-ounce Philharmonic, the 1-ounce Britannia, 1-ounce Kangaroo, the 1-ounce Krugerrand. I mean, you're not saving any money, and you're 10 or 100 times less flexible. So I think, whether you're playing poker with your friends or driving on a super crowded highway, you can never have too many outs or too many options or too many exits. So for me, the savings that you get in big bars right now is not commensurate with the complete loss of flexibility and or liquidity. For me, it would be Buffalo Rounds or Philharmonics, Krugerrands, Britannias, Kangaroos. They're all going to be right in the 5 to 5.25 price range over the price of silver, right in that range, maybe 550 on some of them. But that would be your best choice, in my opinion, because you're getting flexibility, you're getting recognizability, liquidity, and to go to a bigger bar to save a few cents an ounce is completely penny wise and pound foolish.
Thank you for that. Do you still have the Krugerrands on special and still have them in stock?
Yep.
Tell people about that.
Yep. $5.29 over spot on the Krugerrands while supplies last. I am supposed to have 50,000 more in next week. I still have some from the initial special. I'll keep selling them at that price for as long as I can. And I think your listeners out there will see that's a really, really, really good price.
So if anybody is interested in getting more information about that or putting in an order, you can email arcadia@milesfranklin.com. And I bet Raheem or Chris would be nice enough to type that in the chat so you can just click on it. Let's see if we have any other questions. So Chris wants to know what happens if the Fed breaks before that or goes down before that. David Smith, do you want to field that one?
What if the Fed goes down before that? Before what? Before the silver breaks?
Yeah.
Well, it's hard to say.
Would the Fed be unusable, or ACHs and wires be unusable for the first time in my recollection? I mean, maybe that happens more frequently, but I had never heard of that before. So do you think that was a precursor to anything?
I don't think that was a one-off event. I think that just shows stress on the system. I'd like to comment a little bit more on what Andy said about the Bitcoin question. I agree with him. I think that traders who think a little bit ahead will take some of those profits and continue to buy silver. But I don't regard silver / Bitcoin as a binary situation. I think most of the people that are buying cryptos have not been big silver buyers and vice versa. but I think they both have a place at the table. I mean, Bitcoin is the public face of the DeFi revolution, which is going to change everything in finance going forward. And it's going to continue going on through its own cycle. And silver is on a parallel course. I think they can both exist and be supportive of each other because they're both, silver is established on its money, and Bitcoin is an attempt to build established value. And so they both have a place at the table as far as I'm concerned. That people shouldn't be warring against each other about it.
Thank you for that. And apparently I misunderstood Chris's question. He was specifically asking, what if the Fed's junk systems go down before the people can clear their stimulus checks in their antiquated clearance system? So
then they're screwed. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
And that's why, preparation has to be done before, and that's why, there weren't enough life rafts on the Titanic. No one thought it could happen, and it did. And those that, you need to have your life raft blown up before you hit the iceberg. And when we talk about all of these possibilities, they grow more plausible and possible every single day. So what's wrong with preparation before it becomes completely and totally obvious? Look at what the biggest money in the world is doing. The amount of deliveries off of COMEX alone should shine a light upon what the really wealthy people are doing. And that is they're taking possession ahead of hitting the iceberg. And that's what ought to be done here, I think, is preparation before something like that happens. And last week's Fed, breakdown where you couldn't even send wires is a prime example of what could happen.
And, Andy has been reporting on what he just said for over a year. And if there's anyone out there who's listening who has no silver and just hasn't done it, I would suggest that they find a legitimate source and buy 1/3 or 1/4 of what they'd like to have so that they have something, and then dollar cost average it in or buy it into weakness or whatever. But they'll be cheering for lower prices, which they may or may not get. But no matter what happens, they won't be left standing at the station with no silver whatsoever.
May I hop in for a second, fellas?
Please.
Please.
I have two questions. The first, we could do this Price is Right style. I'll hit the refresh button in a minute. Yara, how does it work? Like, if you wanted to do $1 more and completely knock somebody else's bid out,
that's why people always would say, I'll take 1561, Bob, because you want to just
you want to go. So you want to go last, right?
Yes, but you don't want to go over.
Okay, so Andy, you're going first. What number do you think we're up to?
67,000.
David?
I would say 69,000.
Yara?
Well, for the sake of what we just said and not going over, I'm going to say 66,999. Although I think it's much higher than that. Oh my
Yara
God.
wins.
666. That's a lot of sixes.
Yara, I believe you were over too. So
I know.
Definitely, this is a game that can be played along at home, and I'll back out. But actually, Nibbles had a question here. I'm curious. It's amazing that the Fed went down, short squeezes started. I'm not surprised CNBC's not covering it, but especially you, David, I'd love to know, but all of you, what do you think actually happened there?
I have no idea. None. I heard someone told me they were hacked, is what I was told. I don't know if that's true or not, but they were hacked and then ran away real quick before they were caught, just to kind of show that they could do it.
Something like the Bank of Bangladesh when they lost quite a bit of money a few years ago. I have a question for Chris. Chris, did you include the amount that was pledged while you were having tacos by Andy in that total?
No, that's not in there yet.
Well, I was right then.
That's still in the futures. That's on paper still. We need the fizz.
Well, it works in the COMEX market paper.
That's a great
Well, I
point.
could run away and go grab my wallet and try to do it if you want. I can do
David,
that.
I will check if anyone is hedging those futures by selling on the COMEX.
Well, this has been really fun. I don't know how many other questions we have, but there's a lot. I think we can probably come back and do this again and still have lots of questions. But I did see that Jim Rogers is going to be premiering at his AMA with Wall Street Silver. So I wanted to let everybody in the chat know that that's coming up here at the top of the hour. And I highly recommend that because that will be a lot of fun. And Wall Street Silver is doing so many great AMAs. They've gotten amazing guests on, and let's go support their channel and, you know, share, and subscribe for this, please. This is my first one, so that'll make me feel special and happy. But also, I really just want to get the word out about silver. And then I'll head over to the live chat at Wall Street Silver starting here in a little while, and we can continue all the fun and party over there.
Yara, you're doing an excellent job today. You're a great host.
Oh, well, thank you so much, David. You guys make it so easy for me. Really, I mean, all I have to do is sit here and you know, try to read the chat. I know that there's a slow down the chat feature, but that doesn't matter. Like, you guys make it easy for me. And thank you so much for bringing your expertise and your opinions and, you know, just bringing yourselves here. I mean, this is a movement and we're all a part of it. And I feel honored to get to share screen time with you guys, but mostly to get to share what you have to say with so many people. So thank you both for joining me. And
You're doing an awesome job for sure.
Well,
I've
thank
seen a couple
you.
marriage proposals out there for you too, Yara.
Oh, really? I haven't been able to read it, but maybe I'll go back and read later. Or if I'm ever not feeling so awesome, I'll go read the chat. So
good deal.
Thank you guys. And is there any last thoughts you want to share before we start the week on a new week of the Wild Ride of Silver?
Keep doing what you guys are doing, and I'm honored to be a part of it. We'll keep trying to be the best price in the country for all your listeners, and I will be here whenever you need me. I'll be here yet tonight. If you guys jump back on, let me know. I'm going to go grab my wallet and make a donation.
Awesome. Thank you, Andy. David, is there any last parting words for all these lovely people before we go?
I really think that all of us here are witnessing an historic changing of the guard, and I can't tell you that it'll happen by Wednesday, but it's not going to be something that's years and years out anymore. We're going to be surprised when it happens, and maybe what seems to cause it, but it's in the software. It's written in the rocks, as the Canadians would say. Something big is going to happen soon.
Awesome. Well, that's a great way to end. And thank you all for everyone who joined us, for your comments, for your likes, for your shares. And let's keep this movement going. Share the billboards. And oh, Chris is back. Do you want to say any parting words for these lovely people before the week starts? You're on mute.
Whoops. Andy, Jess, can you tell us one more time before we wrap up what you're hearing in the 1,000-ounce bar market?
Still 4+ weeks, minimum of $1.25 over to get them, 4+ weeks. And what does the plus mean? Don't know. Anytime I get the plus after what I'm told, it makes me very concerned. So 4+ weeks, $1.25 over minimum for them. And they're all supposedly brand new bars, meaning none of the secondary market bars are being offered. These are supposedly bars that are being made from COMEX refineries.
Thank you for that update. And thank you to Ray Foley. I appreciate that. And I appreciate all the feedback, guys. Like, I never wanted to be on this side of the camera. I just like being a part of it, but this is a lot of fun for me too. So thanks for all the awesome feedback. And thank you, Andy and David, for being here. And thanks, Chris, for trusting me with your YouTube show. I feel totally honored. So, oh, Fat Vegan wants to know when the billboards will be up. We'll have updates on that shortly. There's lots of things happening behind the scenes. So I think we'll maybe get Ivan back on to give some updates. But I know that there are some polls as far as the slogans go on Twitter. So maybe they'll talk more about that on with Jim Rogers tonight. So, and with that said, I think we're going to wrap up so we can all go and check out the other Oh my gosh. That picture. What a happy dog peeing on JP Morgan. All right. Well, thank you
Oh,
all
you
for
guys
being
are too
here.
much,
Please
man.
like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you soon.
Peace.
Peace.